Hi there, Elwood City Limits listener. This is Will, and it's that time once again for us to wrap up another season of Arthur here on Elwood City Limits, the Episodic Arthur podcast. Can you believe this is the 20th time that we've done this? Wrapped up a season, watched a full season of Arthur, and we want to thank you for joining us through that journey. So as usual, Lucas and I are going to be running down our top 5 episodes of the season, and we are also just going to be talking generally about what we liked about it, stuff we maybe didn't like about it, because we are in the 20s now. It's hard to believe. Arthur, of course, in case you didn't know or have forgotten, ends with the 25th season. So we're coming up to very close to the end, but we still got plenty of ways to go. It's, when you look at it, I think now it's like, just doing some quick mental math in my head, it's like around 20-something episodes of Arthur left. But considering that that's like 20 weeks, if not more, yeah, we've still got plenty of time together. So don't worry too much. Season 20 is right in the middle of the new era of Arthur, especially considering the fact that this is the shortest season yet, and it will only get shorter from here. This season saw the takeover of a new animation studio. It saw new voices. It was a whole new thing to get used to, and really, I think the leap from this style of Toon Boom was less jarring than traditional animation to Flash. That was the whole thing. It's like now we've ripped off the Band-Aid, we're here, and it feels really like, as I've said before, the animation feels a little bit tighter, and I like the look of it a little bit better than the previous Flash animated seasons. I think it just kind of suits what they're going for, and I believe this is the process that they're still using with new animation as well. So I think it suits the show pretty well. You know, it's still, I mean, listen, I love the old cell animation, but we can't go back to those days anymore, unfortunately. So this is what it is, and I think it looks pretty good. It was actually kind of nice to have a bit of a shorter season. It's only from 10 episodes to 7, so not that much of a difference. It's when we get down to the 4 and 3 episode seasons that time's probably really going to start to fly. I can't imagine. That's going to feel so strange. But it still pretty much feels like the same show that we've been covering for now. Especially in the later seasons, there's a lot of references, a lot of old head references that are still happening, and I appreciate. We're making more use of the background characters, and we are just making things for the adults who grew up with Arthur. Not as much as for the kids, but there's a little something for you and me, as there are for the kids. And thankfully, there are enough episodes to fill out a top 5. That was the other thing I was a little nervous about, because with less episodes, that means that the ones that are here really have to hit. And I was able to find 5 that I liked. I was worried we might have to bust it down to 3. When we get to the really short seasons, we're gonna be changing that up a little bit, because maybe we'll have to wait and see. I believe it's season 22 that we get the first 4 episode season. Let's see if seasons 22 to 25, is there one perfect Arthur season with no misses? It'll certainly be an easier target to hit there, but we'll see. I'll be very interested to find that out. And maybe you listening, you might already be more familiar with these newer episodes than we are. Maybe there is one perfect season. I would argue that, of course, season 1 is, but that's my nostalgia. Anyway, so season 20, I think, pretty good. Like, I think we're in a pretty good place with this. It's hard. I think that there is a level of quality that I would be surprised if we truly hit again. This is all couched in my nostalgia. This is, depending on when you grew up with Arthur or what your favorite point of the series is, it'll feel different for you. So I don't want to hold it to the very high standards in my head. I will say that I think that the writers, the animators are doing really good work here. Even in the episodes that I don't especially like, there is at least, I feel, something there to come back to. And we'll see if shortening the seasons distills the quality, ups the quality. just per minutes, I suppose. I don't know, but yeah, I think we're still in a good place with it. I'm still enjoying it. I'm really happy that when we changed animation styles, it wasn't like this supreme drop off in quality. It was just a change, and we were able to roll with those changes. Thanks everybody for corresponding with us via email, elwoodcitylimits@gmail.com, over on the Patreon, Discord, and on social media too. Thank you very much. We are getting close to a milestone on Instagram. It is at Elwood City Limits on Instagram. Give us a follow over there if you haven't yet. We are close to something, and that'll be very fun to celebrate. We also want to thank all of our patrons, patreon.com/Elwood City Limits, for supporting us over there. And there are some of those patrons which are going to get a mention right now. People like Leanne S. and Light Relentless. People like Ross Ward and Jake Bailey. Thank you to Marlo Stanfield and Peebs. Thank you, Lawrence and Ursula Cat. Thank you, JHC and Kevizard Edits. Thank you, Lauren Rodriguez and Richard Mortimer. Thank you to David Corrales and Derek Watson Jr. Thank you to Hannah Lee and Scott Ripley. Thank you, Vonnie G and Robin Marks. And thank you to Tara and Zach. Patreon.com/Elwood City Limits. Don't forget, we had our latest episode of ECL Origins, where Lucas and I talk about Dragon Ball. That was a really fun episode. And if you have always wondered what exactly is up with Dragon Ball, if you've been on the outside looking in and you want to know what people like us really like about it, check that out. If you want to go down memory lane with us and you are also a Dragon Ball fan, check it out as well. We're both really happy with that podcast. Coming up for May, we've got For the Kids, and we're going to be talking about Blue's Clues. For the Kids is our podcast where we talk about other children's shows. It used to be under the banner of PBS Kids, but now we're branching out a little bit, and Blue's Clues, not a PBS show. As far as I know, I haven't done research into it yet, but I will be soon, and I'd be very interested to see what I find. Blue's Clues, I think, was special for Lucas and I, so we'll get ready to talk about that very soon over on Patreon at the end of May. And that's about what you can expect as a patron. Now, let's head on over to Lucas to see what he has to say about Season 20 of Arthur.
Hi, everybody. It's your pal, Lucas Mancini here, with my top 5 Arthur episodes of Season 20. Apologies for the scuffed audio. We're making do with what we have today, folks. But still, it's the content you want to know. You want to know the top 5. That's what's important. So let's get to it. Number 5, Hallway Minotaur, a George episode. Kind of something we've been looking for a while now. Been a minute since we've checked in with our buddy George. And an interesting concept to explore. George kind of being seduced by the power of authoritarianism. You know, what is a character like George like when he runs mad with power? And I like that we kind of get, even though we missed out on actually hearing from the man himself, I like that we get a send-off of one of my favorite characters, Mr. Haney. So I thought it earned its spot, number 5 on my list. Number 4, Mutiny on the Pitch. This one's on here. I liked it a little bit more than Will did. I really appreciated the writing and structure of this episode. I thought that the push and pull of, the group needs to make the decision. Do they like winning games or do they like having fun? Are they going to go with Buster as the coach or Francine as the coach? I thought it was a really well-written episode, and I love the kind of conclusion, the way it wraps up. Number 3, Fern's Flights of Fancy. I think it is a great story within a story. And especially in the Flash era, I always appreciate when they do this because we get a different animation art style. And I think the moral is a great moral for young people interested in being creative, interested in being artists, about you need perseverance. You can't be faced with one setback and give up. You need to push on. And I think the episode accomplishes that moral in a really sophisticated way. Number 2, He Said, still not used to saying that name of the episode. Wow, a Bud episode on my top 5. You thought it would never happen. It's happened. Probably my favorite Bud episode ever, even though it's kind of barely a Bud episode. I think it's a great use of the Rashomon style of storytelling, which I'm always a fan of. seeing different perspectives. That's not how it went. It went like this. Always a great kind of storytelling mechanism, and I think this was a shining example of it. And number one, I would just go as far as to say the best Arthur episode in years. You probably already know. It has to be Serial. This one was infamous. I feel like 10 years ago, well, I guess we haven't been doing this for 10 years, but 6 years ago or so, me and Will were hearing murmurs of this episode, the infamous podcast episode. We're at Arthur Podcast. We got to do an episode about podcasting. And despite that bias, despite kind of the baggage that we went into this episode, okay, it's the podcast episode. What's it going to say about podcasting? I thought it's amongst the most notable of the modern episodes. It lives up to the hype. It has really insightful things to say about podcasting as a medium. And it also has some pretty critical things to say about the Serial podcast, even though the episode came out right when that podcast was new. So it's aged incredibly well, more so than maybe some of the other modern episodes have. So I think it's a really standout episode in the total Arthur canon. Maybe my favorite modern era episode of Arthur. So definitely one to seek out. And that is my list. Thanks again for listening, folks. And I can't wait to hear what Will thinks and what his top 5 are.
Hi, I'm Carter Loggy, one of the listeners of the Elwood City Limits podcast. If you want to support the podcast, here's some things that could help you. You can listen to the podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. You could also check out their YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Elwood City Limits. That's where I usually listen to the podcast. For social media, there's X, formerly known as Twitter, at ECL Podcasts, Instagram.com/Elwood City Limits. For Twitch streams, it's twitch.tv/Elwood City Limits. There's also Facebook, facebook.com/Elwood City Limits, and Tumblr, elwoodcitylimits.tumblr.com. You can also go to their website, which is elwoodcitylimits.libsyn.com. If the podcast is not on the service you use, just let them know. Finally, pay as little as $1 a month to get bonus content and getting ECL episodes a week early. You can go to their Patreon, which is patreon.com/Elwood City Limits. That's all from me. Let's get back to the show.
Thanks, Lucas. All right, it's my turn now for my top 5 of season 20. All right, so number 5 for me, it was, as much as I say that, the quality is still fairly strong, I would say. It was not hard to pick out the 5 episodes that I liked the most. So, number 5, Prunella's Tent of Portent. This one gets on the list just because I love Prunella and Marina. I love that double act, and I'm really glad that I am able to understand how much I like it before the series is over. And I really also hope, as we get to the end, I realize that space on the show is going to be hard to come by. Real estate of episodes. We're going to be losing more and more. It would be nice if we got one more Prunella and Marina episode, but if not, this was a nice one. Now, the conflict at the center of it as an episode, it's fine. It'll do. But what I really like is their friendship and seeing it get tested a bit. And there was also some funny bits in here, especially with Buster. So that was enough for me to bump it up to number 5, especially. Hey, it's my list, and this is what I like to see. Speaking of lists, number 4, LaDonna's like list. There you go. A LaDonna episode made it into a top 5. Good for her. I know that we're very hard on the Compsons, but this one I liked, and of course this was in our most recent episode of Elwood City Limits, so if you want my more in-depth thoughts, you can listen to all of these past episodes, surely. But as I said in there, what I really liked about it was that it is an issue, not an issue, but it's something that kids can understand and that adults can understand too. In fact, that's something of a theme in a lot of Arthur episodes that I really like, is that I feel like it's speaking to me even as a 30-plus-year-old, as much as it's trying to speak to the 8-year-olds of the audience. And with this one, it was that friendship and relationships is not something that you can cultivate and check off a list like in a video game, which is Really weird mixed messaging because I'm still playing Death Stranding right now, and that is definitely a game where you can check off relationships. So that's where my mind is at with it. But this is a good reminder that like that's not the heart of human connection. And LaDonna learns that lesson, and it was also a George-focused episode, which I'm always really happy to watch. Number 3, speaking of focus episodes that I'm always happy to watch, it's Fern with Fern's Flights of Fancy. This is another one where it was like, I'm actually kind of dealing with this in my life right now, and that has to do with how Fern tries to write something for a writing contest. I mean, Fern's a writer. Like, she is probably, I mean, I don't know if there's a probably about it. She's the best writer among that friend group, and then she doesn't win. So then, what is she? And it's this imposter syndrome. It's feeling like you're not good enough at the thing that you're really good at. And, I mean, like I said, I'm dealing with that now myself. And it was good to know that just because you put your all into something, it doesn't mean that either you're the best at it or that it will lead to something. But that's not a bad thing. I feel like there's a discourse going on right now, or at least I've seen it on Twitter and what have you, of like monetizing your hobbies, which it's funny for me to say because I'm monetizing my hobby right now as you're listening to it. But it's not something that will necessarily lead you to being more happy. And the best thing is to do things for yourself that make you happy. And so I'm learning to do that, and Fern learns to do that in 11 minutes. I wish it only took 11 minutes for me. I just thought this was another really interesting thing for kids to chew on, and a message that can resonate if you're an adult as well, especially if you're a writer like Fern and I are. Number 2, I'm going to go with Lend Me Your Ear. It's a Ratburn episode. I love Ratburn episodes. Again, we're running out of room with how much more we can learn about Mr. Ratburn and the fact that his hearing isn't so good because he's in a band. I talked about this with Hannah on the episode. This gave me like season 1 vibes, especially Arthur and the real Mr. Ratburn. And I think that that's a great thing of being able to do that again, but also can have conceit to the fact that Mr. Ratburn is basically the kids' friend at this point, and we can still learn some depths about him and be surprised by him. And we're going to be surprised by him really soon, too, if you get what I'm saying. But this was a lot of fun. We even combined a little bit of magical realism with the kids going inside Mr. Ratburn's ear and finding out how the ear worked, and then getting to see him in his sweats playing with his band. I thought this was just a really fun episode. I liked it a lot. Number 1, I mean, you probably guessed this. As soon as we talked about it, it's got to be Serial, the podcast episode of Arthur. Of course it is. But I say that because it's a really good episode. And again, another message that I was taking to heart as much as I was hoping the kids watching it took to heart. And that's Buster grappling with telling the truth and telling your version of the truth. And in these situations, what's the right thing to do? To lose friends or to tell the truth, as I keep saying. But that was an interesting way to frame it, and especially through the lens of podcasts. I mean, think about this. When Arthur, the first season, was coming out, what was the biggest technology? We had TV, we had computer games, we had, moon boots, the radio, and now we've got podcasts. Arthur is truly something that speaks to people of my age demographic, people of younger age demographics, and it's cool to see Arthur going with the flow and finding an evergreen message in a piece of technology that, well, let's see if it's still here in the next decade. Maybe it will be, maybe it won't be. But I just thought this was really clever. Of course, I got to do a little deep dive on the actual Serial podcast. I liked the little references here and there to the making of a podcast, and it is funny that it basically started right after we started doing this. I don't hold any illusions that one influenced the other, but still, it was a nice little way to celebrate as we have now reached the point in our timeline where Lucas and I have started Elwood City Limits within the original run of Arthur. So number 1, it's got to be Serial. And looking back at these hits, I mean, there were definitely episodes in season 20 that I thought were just okay or just outright didn't like, but the ones that I did like here really resonated with me quite strongly. So Arthur still has that ability. I feel like these season recaps are a chance to appraise, like, is this still working? Like, are we still having fun? I'm still having fun. So I hope that you are too. And thanks a lot for listening to this season recap. Now it's time to ask, what did you think of season 20? What are your favorite episodes? Which episodes did you not really like? Is there anything coming up that we should be aware of? Obviously, I know we've got certain episodes around the bend soon that are going to be quite trailblazing. I keep an ear to one of our patrons, Peebs. He's got the inside scoop for all the Arthur seasons. Season 21, I think, on the production side is going to be a little bit quieter than usual. But I'm looking forward to the final 7-episode season of Arthur before we get into the real short ones. So thanks very much for listening to this recap of season 20, and thanks for listening to Elwood City Limits. My name's Will Young, and for Lucas Mancini, we'll see you next time.